Can you build a bigger neck with cables only? 100%. And this is exactly how I've been training recently to take my yoke gains to that next level. So I recommend you all grab your neck harness and clip it to the cable station. Whether it's low or high, the options for experimentation are endless. And what you'll find, which is the major benefit I'll be discussing today, is that you have angle and strength curve adjustability, which is always great for minimizing overuse, overcoming plateaus, but most importantly, enhancing the difficulty of the movement. For example, when looking at the free weighted neck extension, it's gravity operated while being close to your center of mass. Therefore, the loading potential is insanely high. That's why it's typically recommended to not be 100% upright. You want to lean forward a bit or sit down so that you're angled slightly. This way, when you extend at the top, there's peak tension. Now with cables, it changes because the direction of resistance is diagonal, no longer 100% vertical, which actually goes better with the range of motion of your neck. It's pulling you forward and then you're extending this way, but the resistance profile has you straining more throughout the entire range of motion. At the top, whether you're completely vertical or not, you feel that tension. You can't hold that position for very long. And so the further you step back, the more difficult the exercise becomes as the angle of the cable changes. Then as you get more fatigued, what can you do? You step more forward to the point where you get in that original neck extension position that you would do with free weights. So with all these factors combined, you're effectively getting more out of less weight. The vast majority will struggle to hit 45 pounds for 3 sets of 20, even though you were easily able to do that on the free weighted version. In fact, after you get past a certain load, which is going to be dependent on your weight and height, the cables start to pull you forward to the extent that it magnifies the load a little bit more. You won't understand this until you get in the trenches, but basically it's hard to make big weight jumps. That keeps your ego in check and is especially important for the neck, where you can possibly risk injury if you start to use cheat reps or go beyond your disc capacity in its current time frame. This will force you to take your time with progression. It is slow but sure. Also, you may need to stabilize yourself more by placing a heavy object in front of your legs, because I'm not exaggerating when I say the cables will pull your entire body weight. So by having something that keeps you in place, or even wearing a weight belt, this will allow for the most amount of weight to be used eventually. But that said, most of you will probably not run into this problem until you exceed a plate or so. And it's more so noticeable for exercises like the neck curl, which is what I want to talk about right now. There is a significant drawback that affects many lifters with small necks. There's too much cheating potential. Of course, if you use perfect form and really focus on that mind-muscle connection, this won't be a problem. And after a certain point, you're repping 90 pounds, you won't have a small neck, even if it's not the best from a stimulus to fatigue standpoint. That said, depending where it is on your head, that actually affects the strength curve. And you don't know how much your abs are contributing to the movement, as well as having momentum or using the arms to pull. If we're talking about free weights, the best option would actually be on a really high bench with a harness suspending the load. And now you can curl perfectly, but of course you're gonna have to drop the weight by maybe 50%. But I know a lot of you guys don't have that setup, so that really leaves you with two options. Clipping the cables from a high position where you're standing up, doing a neck extension this way, or setting the cables low while lying down on a bench. This mimics the plate version the best. But I must emphasize, the loading capacity is very limited. It's an extremely difficult exercise, and unless you can perfectly adjust the cables, you might not line it up the best. It's also really annoying to set up, so I'd only use this as a finisher for very high reps. The best option is, of course, standing up and treating it like the regular banded neck curl. And this is much better than having a harness with free weights coming from behind you. That exercise has a far from ideal strength curve. Sure, you're getting a way to stretch, but the range of motion is really nothing as you get closer to this neutral position, which you could also hold all day. And then when you flex here, it's a joke because there's no opposition loading. So what you want is the direction of resistance to come diagonal from the top. Same thing with the neck extension, but it's in reverse. We're either coming this way or that way. X for neck gains. Makes sense? So who is this exercise for? Guys that have already mastered the plate neck extension or got really good at using the 19-pound band from Neck Flex. This is awesome. I've made great gains with this approach, but it's limited in the sense that you only have access to higher reps. And even if you stand further back, we have to admit that from a progressive overload standpoint, band-only resistance is not ideal. So you can still use a Neck Flex. This is the best harness on the market, link in the description box, and this is the new Kevlar edition, which actually has this nice material on the inside, which is very comfortable. Still use it, but you can now go beyond band tension using the exact same movement pattern, hitting reps of say 15 to 25. And what I'll say here is, if you can neck curl between 35 and 45 pounds for 4 sets of 25, you're probably gonna have a really jacked neck, because that exercise right there is really freaking challenging. And it'll make you realize that you've been cheating like crazy on your plate neck curl. This will prove it to you, mark my words. And it has a superior strength curve. Remember, just because your neck is bending throughout a full range of motion doesn't mean it's actively loaded in those joint angles. Finally, I get a lot of questions about side neck work and if it's actually needed. My answer would be no, but if you want to bias the sternocleidomastoid a little bit more, then you can always do neck flexion to the sides, thereby getting a rotational effect. This is actually better than the neck side bending, which I don't do a lot of these days. I think it's great for combat athletes, but really flexion is where it's at. And then neck extension builds your thickness from the rear, giving you that Mike Tyson effect. But if you want to look wide from the front, then it comes down to flexing here or there, or rotating with flexion. And so the best way to do this is actually with bands, to be honest, but with cables you can do this as well. And there's greater loading potential. There's two ways to do it. Either stand on the side of the cable and curl at an angle, or offset the loops of the harness itself. So instead of being even on the sides, you want to put one attachment in the center. This way, your neck harness is literally crooked, which naturally creates a rotational effect, like you're doing a wood chop. You know the exercise for obliques? Same thing, but it's with the neck. So those are really good to do in a fatigue state right after neck curls, and you'll feel that pulling sensation on the sides. So that's really about it, guys. This is how you get a big neck with cables. It's simple, adjustable, and very difficult. So I hope you give these exercises a shot. Let me know how they go, and I'll talk to you all next time.